Hi everybody, my name is Adam Pike and welcome to my podcast. I don't know if I'm going to call it something or not, but today we're discussing evolution, so you could call it the Evolution Podcast. I'll see if I can make that mine if it doesn't already exist. The main reason for me deciding now, after the horse has bolted to close the gate or to start doing podcasts now the market's saturated, is because I feel there is a lot of worth in two people having a conversation that you guys can listen to. You don't have to be part of that conversation. You can just hear, soak in what you feel is relevant for you, argue some points that we might make, but predominantly to give you something to take away that leaves you thinking about what we've discussed. And the way that I intend to do that is to interview people who I've come across in life that I believe are quite special individuals who have got a wealth of knowledge and experience to share with you. Obviously, I try my best to work in a very trauma-informed way. For me, trauma is the catalyst of a lot of things that is wrong with the human experience. Sometimes we don't get to live out our traumas, we don't get to finish them. And we're going to discuss that more in the coming weeks, because obviously I'm just doing some training at the minute as well. So I want to be on point for you guys to sort of be there as a link pin to sort of help you understand the deeper rooted reasons why we are the way we are. So without further ado, I'd really like to get this podcast going. First guest on my podcast today is a lady called Claire Streeton, who I met in 2019 at the beginning of my change of life journey. She was a person that I'd seemed to click with straight away. There was a drawn part to her that, you felt you knew each other. And the reason why I've asked Claire on today is because she has gone through an evolutionary process. She's gone through a big process of change. I'll let Claire share the story with you, but she regards herself as a witchy midlifer that tries to find the enjoyment and light in situations. And from me to you, she's a great helper. Claire's realm is working with ladies who are potentially experiencing issues such as menopause, having issues such as like chronic fatigue, things that are very close to her heart. Just decided to set up her own practice, so part of this is to sort of see if there is a market for you where you could reach out to Claire. We're going to do this all like in about an hour's podcast, so it won't be too long, it won't be too heavy. There's going to be content throughout which hopefully backs up our conversation at that time with a bit of theory. All the theory and links will be provided for in the comments. So I just want you to sit back, take a listen, see if you like it or not. I'd love to introduce Claire to you right now. Reason why I've asked Claire to come on, especially with the Evolution Podcast, is that every week we're at university, she always said, I don't know if I'll be here next week. And she's laughing, you can't see her just yet. But it was the case that every week she plugged out, and she got somewhere. So without further ado, Claire, welcome. Thank you for joining me today and coming to the podcast, being my first one.
Thank you. I'm very privileged. And it's lovely to talk to you. Always is, Mr. Pike. So yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And obviously, this might sink or swim, but like I said to you earlier, you've got to cast the nets to catch the fish.
This is Fingers growth crossed. Itself, isn't it? Yeah.
This is. We're actually what we're actually doing by doing this is evolving in ourselves.
Yeah. So. I wrote something down earlier that I'm going to share. It says, growth happens right on the edge of what we think we cannot do.
Wow. Powerful. Yep. Growth happens on the edge of what we cannot do. Wow.
What we think I like we cannot do.
What we think we cannot do.
Yeah.
There is, as metaphors go, you and I love a metaphor, don't we?
Oh, we'll be all over it. Yeah.
We will. And there is some to come in some slides later.
Good.
So Claire, do me a favour, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and your experiences, if you don't mind.
We'll try. It's the introvert's worst beginning, though, isn't it, to a meeting? Like, sat here going, oh, no. Well, you've already done a little bit of an intro, haven't you? So,
Thank you.
I've obviously known you since 2019 when we kind of crossed paths on our degree, which even by itself is just crazy to think it was 2019. It was that long ago. But yeah, I think you, what did I describe myself as? A witchy midlifer trying to find the magic in the mess at the moment. And yeah, I'm not going to go back through loads of stuff because we'll be talking about things as we move forward. But yeah, I am currently a wellbeing coach for York St John Community Centre.
Wow.
And yeah, as you've kind of already started to talk about evolution and change, I am at the precipice of, or in the midst of, a transition after starting something that I thought I wanted, didn't seem to match my inner soul calling. So yeah, I am in a phase of transition myself at the minute.
There was something that I think we spoke about a few weeks ago about how the course didn't match your energy, didn't match where you wanted to be. It was something that you'd strove, you desired, you wanted to always go that next step on the learning, ladder, but then getting there and then realizing actually this isn't for me. So the fact of you're not bouncing each week going, I don't know if I'll be here next week. You've done 5 weeks.
I know, when I laugh, I still laugh when you say that, and I really shouldn't, because honestly, even when I think back, I mean, now what am I? I'm 49 next year, so I started uni as a mature student. I was like extra mature student, because I think a mature student's 23, and it was incredibly difficult shifting identities for me from being a stay-at-home mum with 2 children to stepping into a world where, I mean, I love learning. I'll always be a lifelong learner. That the learning didn't faze me. Actually, when we got there and I started realizing what it was all about, it threw me. And I think as this kind of discussion continues, I will imagine we'll touch upon certain buttons like perfectionism, not good enough, I can't be here. All of it massively impacted me in a way that I just didn't. And then now, looking back 3 years down the line, walking in York Minster to pick up our certificates, first class honours degree, no, never in a million years. And that's part of the memories for me, though, that every week that we met and we all kind of supported each other in that kind of transition and that change and that unexpected world of kind of just sheer craziness and getting to know ourselves or not knowing ourselves. And it was full on.
and it wasn't bad enough that just doing the course, like say taking a big step and a leap into a world that we knew nothing about at that time. Then halfway through first year we got locked down and COVID, and so not only were we changing internally, we were changing in society. We had to change and adapt how we managed ourselves, coming back to university wearing masks and having to sit apart and everything. It was traumatic in its own right, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. And I can remember being sat opposite you doing skill sessions with, do you remember the big plastic screens and the masks? But the one thing I remember from that, and I'm sure other people have their own, probably very deeply ingrained memories and trauma from that period of life that we've all got, everybody globally went through, was the fact that we had that connection, because we were quite a very small magical cohort. I just don't think it'll ever be replicated. And I think because we had such a connection as a group, that helped massively with the management of that hugely unexpected and unprecedented time. And I thought, God, it's taken me 40 something years to get to this point, and now I'm not going to get to finish my degree. But yeah, I mean, again, it's growth, isn't it? It's that learning process and the resilience and how we function and how do we move through that. And sometimes we don't know at the time. It's we just do it. We're just in that survival state, aren't we?
We are, and I think both you and I have lived a life where we've experienced trauma. And obviously, we're going to touch on that later on in the interview. But we're very much aware of how that can prevent us and stop us from listening to our bodies, listening to what's actually happening. So obviously, we say it tongue in cheek about your I don't know if I'm going to be here next week. There's been a voice trauma response, as if to say this is really uncomfortable for me to sit in. I'm feeling a bit out of my depth. So it's really good, and hence why I think that it'll add a lot of value, and hopefully for those that might choose to listen, be it 1 or 1 million, somebody will take something from it. Somebody be able to empathise with it in some way, shape, or form. So we'll dig into that going. But first of all, I always love a bit of an icebreaker, and for me, a friend of mine asked me this question a week or so ago, and I'm just like, wow. So we could nearly do half the podcast talking about this subject. Ooh. It's a very serious subject. Okay. You've already got your cup of tea next to you.
I have. Should I get it ready? Yeah.
You can. If you are only allowed to eat one type of biscuit for the rest of your life, what biscuit would you pick?
Oh, that so stressed me out. I can't choose. I'm a kind of the person, it has to be this or this. If I have a free remit for all the biscuits.
We can certainly rule out, like I said earlier, should have party rings for this inaugural meeting, but it certainly won't be a party ring, would it? It won't be a party ring.
No. It'd have to be a bourbon.
Oh, that's a strong choice.
You've got double biscuit and the cream.
Explain why, though. Explain why a
Because
bourbon
there's
and why
three
not.
paths to it. It's not just like, and it's got the little holes, and like my daughter makes really, really good bourbon biscuits. So, and they dunk really well in tea. They don't break up. So I am a
Homemade
dunker.
bourbons.
Yeah.
Wow. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm shocked by that. I mean, they must
And
be
I'm sure there's
heavy
loads
biscuits.
of better biscuits out there. There's a majority. I mean, we love biscuits. I have to say,
Yeah.
am I allowed to say? I won't say the company name because I can't, or can I?
Yeah, you can, but
Let's just say we have a
we'll do
gentleman that knocks at the door that delivers tea and coffee, and they do very, very nice chocolate biscuits. So
a certain place in Harrogate, you mean, like a
no, I
certain
don't think
tea
they do.
shop.
I think
Oh
it's a little
no.
van that knocks at the door. Like, yeah,
I
does
think I might know what you mean. Obviously,
tea and
other
coffee. Other biscuits
and
are
biscuit
available, but
providers.
they're double chocolate chip of sublime. So yeah.
You know, we've landed in the realm of podcasts and broadcasting when we have to provide the sentence of other
Definitely.
biscuit providers are available. Yours is a bourbon. Wow. I took this question on deeply, and I think he knew that because obviously overthinking things. Now, I don't know what these biscuits are called, but they're kind of like a rich tea, the square, and they've got a real thick layer of chocolate on them.
Oh, Lebanese biscuits.
Yes, there we go. But I can never remember the brand name of which one because you can buy home brand ones, which just
other
don't
biscuit
hit
brands
as
are
hard.
available.
But these ones in particular were just, I don't know, they were like people talked about the Hobnob being an SAS brand of biscuit where they just love being dunked.
Yeah.
These things, I don't think it really matters. I think you just leave them, they just float on and
break the chocolate off. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was interesting how he said that when he did this with a group, there's people were having full-on crisis when they were talking about biscuits, and some people were saying, "Oh, I like this biscuit," and then they were pulling away from the best friends, going, "What?" Like they couldn't
biscuit
actually
disgust, like
biscuit disgust, biscuit snobbery, snobbery of biscuits, being shunned.
Is that more of the I mean, for me, like when I get asked a question like that, I'll say something, and then probably once we finish this, I'll go, "Oh, I should have said that." So for me, that the perfectionist. Oh, which one is the best? Well, I don't know which one is the best because it's what's best for me and what I like
In the moment, I guess.
Yeah, and I will change. I'm quite fickle, so yeah.
I mean, obviously, the only other one I can think of, and obviously I will say a brand name, is a Kit Kat.
That's not a biscuit; it's a wafer.
Well, I mean, again, we're going on to a whole new conversation, aren't we? What is a biscuit?
Well, they're all attached to our memories as well, aren't they? That's the thing. Like our experiences, it's just more than a biscuit, isn't it? I think that's why it is. Yeah.
Biscuits hold a lot more. I like that. I like that connection. Very good.
Good tagline for a new biscuit.
Good tagline. Biscuits. Where do we connect?
Well, if all this fails, I'll go and work in marketing. Okay.
So, if you don't mind, then obviously we'll get to the nuts and bolts, the meat and bread of what we're doing. So I just want to obviously chuck some meat and bread to this conversation. A conversation of evolution. I think for me, the easiest understanding of evolution has to be the hungry caterpillar, and that analogy of, he starts out small, doesn't he? He just has a little bite of a little thing, has a little taste, and he gets bigger from eating, and he bites again and bites again and bites again. As he gets bigger and bigger and bigger, obviously he cocoons up and then becomes a beautiful butterfly and actualizes his natural evolutionary progress. I mean, if we really wanted to dig into it, we could talk about philosophy and Darwinism, and how humanity evolves, how we're the only species, animal creature that lives on this earth that has deep-rooted thinking or thought processes that other animals don't. They just the caterpillar is a caterpillar. He will munch on what he needs to become a butterfly. And I've always used this analogy of, do we actually ever attain our full evolution? As butterflies go, where we've got Helmlich on the other side of it, the German one, that I'm a pretty butterfly, but it actually more manifests as a caterpillar. And if any of those of you have seen Bug's Life, it doesn't actually manage to fly, which is a butterfly.
Beautiful butterfly! My wings! Oh, they're beautiful!
Yeah. So, I kind of wonder, based on sort of that thing there, where would you say your natural path of evolution has been, Claire? What's been some of the stories that maybe you've kind of had?
Yeah, I think that's such a big question, isn't it? Even the word evolution, it just already it's making me go, well, I don't know enough about that. I don't know. I don't know any of the deep kind of, psychological reasonings behind evolution. And I think one thing I do know for sure, what I've learned over the past few years, is that I never give myself credit for the growth that I have gone through. I'm always pushing for the next thing, and I'm always looking for the next thing. So evolution, I think, is a time-led thing, isn't it, sometimes? But you've got, I've got a thing written down here. I've got growth, change, transformation, evolution. There's so many components to what evolution is. And I found something online actually was interesting about evolution, about what is evolution. And they wrote, it was on the Observer, and they'd written down that evolution is when you're no longer comparing yourself to others, and you're not in competition with anybody else. You have a solid sense of identity because you've got to a point that actually I've come through these challenges. That's not to say there won't obviously be challenges in the future, because I think that's life, isn't it? We're met with situations and challenges at different points in time. But is that evolution for you? Would you say that?
Well, I mean, for me, I'm literally looking up, because again, hence why I think what we have to kind of approach this as is evolution of self, evolution of our understanding of self, and our change, our growth. Because that's kind of how I see evolution. I mean, obviously, we are ever evolving creatures, aren't we? Kind of we didn't know how to use smartphones before they're invented, and then we get plonked one on, and now we're all wizards at it. For me, humanity is a way of we've got capacity, we've got cognition to be able to grow and to understand it.
Yeah.
But I suppose in its basic form, which I've just got off a dictionary, Oxford Languages, the gradual development of something. The forms of written language undergo constant evolution.
Yeah, it's that constant. We're always ever. Yeah, that's how I see it. It's like a constant cycle, and I think for me, evolution's mental, spiritual, physical, mental, emotional. There's so many components that we're made up of, and I think we go through rhythms of evolution as well. So I've been on quite a big spiritual journey the last few years as well. So for me, that identity of self has kind of come in from that particular concentration. Absolutely. And other times it's different depending on the challenge that we've had to to go through and process.
And I mean, when you look back now, obviously, like I said, every 7 months our body re-evolves. Our cells change. We are not the same organism as we once were in January. So when you think back to your 2019 self, what would you say parts of you have positively evolved?
Oh gosh, I've definitely grown in terms of my awareness of other people, my compassion for other people, and understanding that people go through all kinds of situations and challenges, and just the ability, university really as well, and being surrounded by peers, to know that there's more than one side to a story. And to, so my evolution came from just my world, if you like, to suddenly going, oh gosh, there's like all these different opinions and all these different approaches, and the critical analysis of things, and going, actually, there's another perspective on this, and that took some getting used to for me, because it was like, really, not to be rejected for a comment or to become reactive because somebody thinks something different to you. It's that understanding of self, of going, it's okay for other people to have a different opinion to you, or for you to have a different opinion to someone else, and absolutely. Sit in that space of going, like you said, the identity of self, going, well, that's my truth, and that's okay. And that's your truth, and that's also okay. So in terms of evolution for me, especially from the environment that we were in and what we were being shown and taught, I learned so much about, other people and connecting with other people. And being around other people, which I think is just so key, especially in the work that we do. It's about connection and trust, isn't it? And
it really is. And when you position yourself in front of somebody as a helper or therapist or coach, like coaching the wellbeing and stuff, we are facilitating, I suppose, in essence, people's change, people's evolution, people's understanding of self. And when we kind of said like caterpillar to butterfly, that's quite it's quite a lineal understanding of how evolution changes. I always wonder about Helmlich. Did he go back and eat again? Because we can see he's still a caterpillar, but he's just got little wings. But did he go back and eat again? Did he have another evolutional
another
state?
cycle?
Did he go another cycle? And for me, what I think a big part of it is, and like we've said, is there's sort of a three-prong attack that how we look at it. We evolve my mind, we evolve in my body, in my world, how we perceive our world to be. And I think categorically right in what you've said there. We kind of have to accept the world is forever changing. We've got to move with the times. My thought process, my mind is forever changing. My mind is always rethinking the beliefs and systems that we used to use, we used to, abide by, but then also bodily evolution too. And I think, sort of if we tie between like sort of what a lovely guy that read John Maxwell, and some people, if you're on a TikTok mission or you like doing your reels and a bit of doom scrolling, his theory was that we have 4 different seasons of change, which kind of we could change is evolution in essence. We hurt enough that we have to, we see enough that we're inspired to, we learn enough that we want to, or we get enough and receive enough that we're able to. Out of those 4 seasons of change, where would you say the truth lies for you?
I've not actually come across this, to be honest. And I mean, I know I work a lot with seasons, but not in this particular state. I work aligned with nature seasons, really, about in that context. But yeah, for me, I think it's the hurt, isn't it? But also, I also need to be inspired to change sometimes. It really depends on the context. I mean, you could have something kind of, let's go quite low scale in the sense that, okay, I want to get fit. I can't walk up that mountain. It really, really hurts me walking up that mountain. I want to get fit. Yeah. Versus something that is incredibly challenging and emotive and is really, really hurting. That's a different type of hurt. So, and everybody's levels are very, very different. Whereas sometimes I can sit and I'm inspired all the time by things that maybe we talk about or conversations I have with friends, and that inspires me to learn and change. Going through the menopause, that's done nothing but put me through a huge transition, and I've had to change and adapt, and I've had to make that decision to lose the discomfort but still be in discomfort to make changes. So I think different times.
And I would kind of align with myself about the hurt enough that we have to, kind of so it's not really our choice. It's something that it seeps into us. It kind of contaminates us. So we actually have to take ourselves out of it. And I think when we're talking around trauma and change, I think what tends to be a big issue with people where they've been traumatized by events. The different types of trauma that I've been exploring is kind of obviously developmental trauma, your epigenetic trauma of your genetics,
transgenerational,
transgenerational. Thank you. But then also your live trauma. I was gobsmacked to hear that when we are in the same situation for long enough, be it a relationship, work, an environment that we're in, where we are in constant fight, flight, freeze, form, where we are our polyvagal, our dorsal vagal system is all fired up, so we're constantly living in the fight, flight. We don't actually see any way or the right conditions to change. But then all of a sudden we get a bang, we get a knock, and all of that environment is taken away from us. It's stripped back to its core, the loss. So not only are we having to change our environment and how we look at it, it's obviously the change because we're hurt. It's also what we've then lost too. It's so not only it becomes a double trauma hit in my eyes. You touched on as well, like bodily change and evolution. And if you don't mind me saying, obviously I know you struggle with chronic fatigue, haven't you, for many a year? How much of that do you feel has been from a traumatic response? Because I'll just leave you with that question actually, and see where this goes. I'm intrigued.
I mean, that's a massive topic. It's been a huge part of my life. I mean, let's say for the last, since I turned 40, and then that was it. It was like there was stuff going on that just hadn't happened before for me in terms of fatigue. And I think is it Steve Jobs that said about it only makes sense joining the dots backwards. So for me, there's a huge, it was like a massive epiphany for me, like joining the dots backwards. And I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue. I think it was 2020, just not long after we started university. And it was only actually through sitting in a lecture with one of our tutors when they were discussing trauma and the window of tolerance and polyvagal theory, and something inside of me just went, oh, something, you know, it's just like all this Velcro just kind of just stuck to me. There was just like a resonance of there's something going on here that I was not aware of, but there's something in this. And it was only after doing that year of university over the summer, I took a trauma coaching kind of course. I worked with a coach on trauma, and it was like a thread that just unraveled for me. And ever since then, I've been learning about, like you've just discussed, nervous system work, window of tolerance, understanding that I suffer really, really quite badly with stress as well. I find it extremely hard to find that neutral ground, but that's all connected. It's like, you know, your nervous system and how you are and how you function. And even this year, from having therapy this year, I've understood that my emotions impact me massively. Suppressed anger, that's a huge thing for me in terms of my fatigue and migraines. If there's something happened, if there's been a conversation, if I've been around something and I've just absorbed maybe other people's energies, or I've not been able to say what I want to say and I've suppressed things, my body just doesn't like it. It will react massively to that. So for me, is a huge link between my well-being emotionally, physically, and responses to that.
My thing about what was your metaphor that you said earlier, which was something that you found in which was quite
about change.
About change.
Yeah, just that when we think we can't do something, right on the edge of when we think we can't do something. Was it that one?
That one. What did that say again?
Change happens right at the edge of what we think we cannot do.
So I would caveat that as well and say that anything we resist persists. Yeah. Anything that we become stuck in is always there. It's, you know, it's just out of touch. And you mentioned obviously the window of tolerance, and quite a lot of people are unaware, you know, so there might be people listening to this who, for one way or another, are just coming out of a traumatic response, which has maybe been a relationship, work. What's so upsetting to see, Claire, in sort of some of the work that I've done with people who, you know, working in helping roles, in quite demanding roles too. So people, adults, especially drug misuse, homelessness, street-based lifestyles, where they share a wealth of the trauma. They soak a lot of it in. So where they're always, you know, we look at that window of tolerance, and obviously we want the window to be as big as it possibly can be, but obviously the hypo and hyper, when you're in a homeless charity, people are coming in, you're on a constant state of hyper arousal, you feel very overwhelmed, you just don't know what's going to happen next. You know, there is very not a lot of time for that hypo, where you can just be spaced out, you can be disconnected. So for you, how would you say your window of tolerance has changed? Maybe if we looked at your 2019 self versus your 2024 self.
It's like miles different. I mean, I don't think I've even heard of the window of tolerance when I started university. I'm not sure whether you had, because I know obviously work different kind of backgrounds of work, but I was definitely, I mean, I still do, I tend to fluctuate more to hyperarousal originally. You know, if I'm stressed and overwhelmed, I'll probably pipe up to the top of hyperarousal, but then I can quite often just become so disconnected and drop down. So I need to find that balance, and you know, I've learned to find ways of managing my stress to help me increase that window, and you know, work within, and like you said earlier, it's that understanding of what's happening in our body. And I think I realized as well from university that, and the evolution that you talk about, the kind of the brain and the body, like it's like sometimes like disconnected from my brain to my body. It's like it's all intellectual, it's all thought processing. So I didn't know what was happening in my body. I mean, I still struggle now to understand, to find, you know, names of emotions, because autism and ADHD is very, very difficult sometimes. Like, you know, there's something going on in your body, but I don't know, if a therapist says to you, what are you feeling? I'm, well, I don't really know, because I can't put a word to it. I just know that I feel a bit weird, or
I'm in that state. I'm in that state, or I'm
yeah,
okay.
it's finding the language to work. But I think I mean, I use a window of tolerance a lot in coaching when we're doing some wellbeing workshops, and I kind of chose specifically to put window of tolerance in because I think it's an absolute key to wellbeing. I think if we can understand and build our self-awareness around maybe what is happening for us, but that doesn't mean it's easy to do it, because it can take time, can't it, for us to feel safe enough to be in a place of actually, oh, I don't know if I want to feel what's going on, because it's just easier for me just to stay in survival.
Yeah, and I think what you tend to find where people go through this, and where a lovely you've done the Centre for Healing, haven't you? The trauma informed coaching, and there was a big part of that for me that really stuck out, of how we misinterpret what trauma is, where we bring all the behavioural changes, the CBT, the DBT, about when I'm feeling hyper aroused or hypo-aroused, or I can't move, I'm in a depressive state. Just take yourself for a walk, or look out your window. Remind yourself that life is good. There's all these behavioral things, and whilst they will add value to people's lives that maybe haven't tried it, they're a good tool to carry around in your rucksack. It is like pruning branches on trees.
It is, yeah.
We're pruning away, the growth that the trauma is, and we're actually building in some strategic boundaries. But then what do we notice after a period of time? The shoots start coming back. The tree and the trauma wants to keep growing and growing and growing, because that's all the body's used to.
That's the pattern we're stuck in. It
is. So where would you say that your mind body mapping out? Because what I've heard, obviously, with you, the 5 weeks at uni, like you say, how long did it take you to even go through that? Because I know you're a big thinker, aren't you? So you mulling on things. So it was a long period, I believe, wasn't it, of you actually deciding to go?
I think we graduated 2022, didn't we? So I'd applied 2 years in a row, and both years I withdrew my application for the postgrad for various reasons, at home and just my well-being. I just wasn't in a place that I didn't think I was going to be able to function well enough to take on that kind of training to be a therapist. So this year would have been my third year. It's taken 3 years to get onto the course. And it took me 5 weeks to realise that, well, maybe less than 5 weeks to realise there was that misalignment there. And even then, like you talking about window of tolerance and, fight and flight, even when you think, not that I've got it nailed at all, because I haven't, it's definitely a work in progress. Like you said, the shoots continue, you cut them off, they're going to come back. And I find myself in a skills session where I was so overwhelmed and on sensory overload, because that's one of the reasons I had to drop out from continuing the training, was because, like, being neurodivergent, I'm still waiting for diagnosis, but managing that stress and that sensory overwhelm in skill sessions especially, I just shut down. I just went into form. It was like, it still happens, even though but actually at the time I didn't know what happened, but because of my self-awareness and because of the experience that I've had in the past and the learnings that I've got, I was able to go, that's what happened. And for me, that's the biggest thing. It's like going, yes, it happens, but I come back a little bit quicker, so I can drop into that self-awareness of going, whereas beforehand I'd be like all over the place, not really knowing what was happening, and I would just suppress it and not really know what was going on, because of the learning and the understanding and going, what was going on for me then? Why did I do that thing? And that's what I did. And then I fell back into form. Then I have a huge shame cycle that I work very, very, I'm working this year. I recognise from my therapy that shame, perfection, guilt, it's all bundled together in a lovely little gift that, you just get given sometimes that you don't expect. So
and there's a big fear about that too, isn't it? You mentioned fawn, so just for some of the listeners, viewers, people who are watching this, so when we are in a hyper arousal state, where basically our polyvagal system, our dorsal, I want to say dorsal vagal, isn't it, that sort of stimulates it. So if you the only reason I remember it is because I could just think of a dorsal fin being attached to our heads. I don't know why. It's like an animal that's floating around the sea that's picking up radars. Where's the danger coming? There's a great big squid over there. But predominantly where we sense danger, i.e. what used to be dinosaurs, wildlife, other people hunting us, we kind of had majorly in that time, we had four responses, didn't we? We had fight, flight, freeze, or flop.
Yeah.
So why would we fight? Well, because if we didn't fight, it would follow us or it would overwhelm us. So, you know, where people say, like with brown bears, you're supposed to be big and scream at them. So we come on, let's have it. If we were to freeze with if we were to freeze with a bear, it'd probably tear us to bits. But I know a lot of people do, and so they're kind of safe, so become inanimate. But in other animals, the freeze effect doesn't work, whereas the flight effect does. So if we run away, you know, we might be able to outrun, say, a crocodile, but if it was a T-Rex coming for us, we don't stand a chance. Or flop, where so if any of you have cats, you might see when they're bringing you a lovely gift home of a mouse, and you think the mouse is dead, then all of a sudden, you know, old Mickey just pops back up and he's gone. The cat's lost interest, so he's flopped, pretending he's dead. Us as human beings, though, we developed an extra one, which is the fawn, which is people pleasing. It's giving ourselves outwardly, despite the fact that we know we can't give and we can't do anymore. So, you know, tell me a little bit more about your fawning in those experiences in the counselling.
I mean, that's the most recent one I could think of for this conversation, but I'm sure there's plenty of moments in my past that I've experienced it, but without realizing I was experiencing it. But definitely in that moment for me was the biggest thing was people pleasing. Even though inside I was feeling something, I just chose, for some reason, my whole body kind of got overtaken by, no, you have to say the right thing. You can't say what you're thinking. Just get it done and get this thing over and done with. Like my body was like, this needs to be finished really, really quickly because you haven't got the energy to continue this particular experience. So my body just shut down, went into people pleasing mode, said what I think I had to say, and then I had to deal with it pretty kind of intensely afterwards, which kind of had a, you know, counter effect of exhaustion, migraine, you know, crying because I knew what had happened. There's like that incongruence between, well, actually I'm saying these things out of my mouth, but my body just doesn't really agree with that. Even though I knew them at the time.
I want to scream, I want to shout, but I'm just going to sit here and nod.
And go nod. Absolutely. And why not? Because it's the safest thing for me to do at that moment in time.
And somebody like, say, for yourself, who, you know, I know you're passionate about going through sort of the menopause, the chronic fatigue and stuff. So helping people, you know, go be more than they possibly can be, to grow, to sort of help with that. Obviously, that involves growing your window of tolerance. So what would you say are some key factors, you know, for somebody who might be listening to this that is in a fawn state all the time, that constantly second guesses themselves, people pleases, but when they take themselves away from that situation, like, shit, I should have said this, or why didn't I say that? And then they kind of beat themselves up. What tips, advice do you give to people?
That's such a big question, isn't it? And I feel like I'm not really qualified enough at the minute to you know, I haven't got this sorted out. I've not fixed it, and neither do I want to fix it. I think through life, the things that we experience, it's an ongoing, you know, process for me to build my resilience and being brave to recognize what's happening within me, and then being able to choose whether it's a safe enough place to actually exhibit what I'm actually really thinking. And that doesn't always happen, does it? We're not always in a situation where we can truly say what we think, and we have to be discerning about our own safety and about who we're with and what, you know, what could happen. But I think for sure the time that I spend, I'm going to say the time I spend on self-awareness, but I know hopefully we'll get to a point that we can talk about too much self-awareness, but I think it's just checking, well, what happened in that situation? And I know you've done a lot on transactional analysis, haven't you? You really kind of like TA work, and I've had TA work.
We'll be touching a little bit on this coming, but
But in terms of like my adult person, I know the work that I've done this year with therapy to understand the different roles that I, you know, child placement and adult placement and parent. It's so deep. It's a lot deeper than what I ever envisaged in the first step. But actually, when you do understand the different parts of us and the different situations and that whole self-awareness of knowing what's going on for us and being able to reflect back on that after, that's where the learning comes. I think it's like a time-led thing. Like I said, it's that evolution, isn't it? It's that evolution of being in an experience and taking what we can from that experience and learning. It's about like we did at uni, it's like, it's not only about being reflective, it's about being reflexive in the sense that, well, okay, self-awareness is brilliant and reflection's brilliant, but actually what we're going to learn from it and what can we do next time? Because otherwise we end up, don't we, in
detaching
the same
yourself and
patterns.
becoming more of a looking down into our
Yeah,
lives and
what's
our
going on?
interactions.
Yeah,
What's
without
going on behind.
overanalyzing as well, because I think it can be quite challenging. I know for how I'm wired, like you said earlier, overthinking, over questioning, over worrying, like all the over things. It's like, but again, they come from somewhere. They don't just come from nowhere. There's a reason why I overthink. There's a reason why I'm sure a lot of people worry about doing things perfectly or not saying the wrong thing in case something happens. But that can stem from childhood experiences, from adult experiences. It's not just because you just don't want to say something.
Yeah.
Because some people can just happily just be quite direct, and can't they, say what they feel.
When we see people be like that, we kind of see a limitless freedom, don't we? We kind of go, wow, you're brave.
Yeah.
But actually, I believe that a lot of that say what they want to say comes from a fight place. I believe that they're actually in the same realm of hyperarousal, kind of saying the obvious, stuff, the unseen things that I reckon I've seen it happen quite a lot, where you don't have that emotional intelligence to know, like Kenny Rogers said, know when to hold them, when to fold them, so just keeping it to yourself where, working with adults in that constantly living in a traumatic state day after day after day, the window of tolerance is
very narrow.
It's not even, it's not even, it's not even a door on a battleship size. We're talking, talking like I want to see like a pea hole size or a pinhole size in a sheet of paper that we used to look through to watch the shadow of like solar eclipses. It's very tiny. It doesn't grow.
Yeah, and it's that again, that we don't know what goes on in other people's lives. We don't experience life through their eyes or their lens, do we? And I know in the work that we do, whether it's coaching and the therapy work that we've done, it to understand the phenomenon, like we say, that big word, isn't it? That phenomenological experience of how, well, what is that person experiencing? Well, what am I experiencing? Because I mean, we talk about the window of tolerance and stuff a lot, but for if we say healing and therapeutic work, both parties have to be in a place of being in a good place on that window, because especially understanding that if you're recognizing that your client's going out of the window, well, that's just not going to work, so we need to work to help, and vice versa. If you're, as a practitioner, suddenly find that you've piped yourself up into hypo, it's not going to be very conducive, is it, for and it's a massive thing.
And I would say as well, with the learning that we've both done, something that resides for me is kind of the practitioner, the helper in that role.
Yeah,
it's that ultimate importance that we have that congruence. We recognize this because it's so easy to go flip into that, rescue mode, or instead of let's just do the work with you. So we make you, instead of it being a one size pinhole, it's two pinholes. You can see it through two eyes rather than just one. Even if that's the work that we're doing, we're opening up somebody's, ability to see. Some of the work that I've done with some of the homeless guys on a voluntary basis, it was great to see, because it's like, how do we, part of the hostel's mentality was we want people to change, we want them to evolve, want them to grow, to actualize their lives. But, we touched on neurodiversity or neurospiciness, I like to call it. We both probably suffer with it. I know full well I do. I sent you a funny link, where someone will say something, and all of a sudden in my head I'm singing a song that that sits in it. But these guys, the sort of trapped 14, 15-year-olds who are very much stuck in that trauma. They're very much stuck in the trauma. So how do we help heal them? Well, it certainly isn't, let's dig into your trauma. Let's pull them boxes of spiders up and see what happens. It's about making them aware that there is a box. It's about making them aware from a case study point of view that other people go through it too. And the more that we have as kids, the more it's going to affect us as adults, because we forego our truth of self to remain attached to our parents, our caregivers. So we could be angry with our parents, be in a huffy puffy mood, but they can't handle anger, so they detach from us. So we actually have to swallow down our anger to remain attached. It's a deep question, and one for the ages. If I might add or give you a little gift, though, I think you say that your own experience from 2019, Claire, to 2024, Claire, is it has evolved. I think you've gone way beyond our friend Helmlich, because I believe you can actualize yourself as a cat, as a butterfly now, because you have flown. You know, you've got to a point where you've trusted something in your body with your gut response.
Yeah.
And for me, I think that's what a lot of people don't do. They don't listen to the gut singing. You know, I've said it to a lot of people in therapy rooms where, you know, would you, if you needed to wee, how much would you keep it in? Where would be the point where you've just got to go, I've got to get it out?
Yeah.
Same with pooing, same with being sick.
Yeah.
You know, these are bodily responses.
Yeah. Urgent. It's got to be urgent.
Yeah. But as soon as we have our second brain ticking over and we get that wobble inside, we don't listen to it. Whereas for me, I think your gut all the way through our 3-year tenure at university was always talking to you, was always going, this isn't right, something's not right here, we're not ready, blah, 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 blah. But then, you know, 5 years later, you've done 5 weeks, gone, this doesn't feel right, I'm gone. I'm gone.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that. And I think it's the whole misalignment, isn't it? And understanding, is this discomfort that I'm feeling from growth? Because I think that's a massive thing. Of course, growth's discomfort. You can feel discomfort. Or is it discomfort from misalignment? And that's where the struggle was for me. It's like, this is different.
And that kind of the delegation and flow thing, this comes from like management and training world, you know, kind of the degree of challenge versus our skill and confidence to actually achieve it. You know, so we want to remain in this flow channel here. But what we tend to find is the challenge feels too big. Yeah. So we have that, what do you call it? The imposter syndrome, don't we? That creeps in where there's no way. I mean, I think we both had it when we went through university. For sure. Why wouldn't we?
It was new ground and new territory. And, you know, I'm same as you. I think we both enjoy a challenge and we need a challenge. But it wasn't that I didn't want the challenge. It just didn't feel right, which is very, very different. You know that I love academic work and you like academia. But, you know, the theory here that you've got, it's true, isn't it? We get to a point that there has to be some, and I did. That's the crazy thing.
Doesn't there?
Yeah, I did have the confidence actually this time, which was crazy because normally I don't. Confidence for me is normally quite low down on a you know, a ladder. So to have the confidence, and I already had like a level of skill for this particular, you know, future path, and to know that I had them, but actually it still wasn't right, was what floored me. That's what was so confusing. And I think with the growth and change, and it made me pull out a book called Transition, which is interesting because it talks about the 3 parts of transition, about endings. There has to be an ending, and then you get into a neutral zone where you feel all kind of uncomfortable and there's just empty space and it's just a bit weird, and then the new beginning comes. So it's recognizing that actually something's going to end before I can then begin this next bit, but in between that is transition.
Now that's a beautiful link, I feel, because, you know, I like that whole thing of the transition of it has to end. What people tend not to recognize when, you know, why do we become bogged in with trauma? Why does our window of tolerance shrink? Well, it's because we don't actually finish or complete our trauma. We leave a lot of it behind because we have to swallow it down. We can't, you know, we're
not like a dog, are we, that shake an animal, just shake, shake it off.
We're not shaking it off.
Yeah.
And there's that kind of thing where, you know, if you've ever been in a fight or flight situation where you've walked across the road, you've not looked, a car's beat at you, you've nearly been run into with deer in headlights, they give you the fingers, scream at you, you cross the road and you give off that big, oh gosh, don't you, like, wow, that was close. And that was ending that trauma, that's ending that experience. Whereas when you've been in a relationship and, you know, the person's walked out on you or hurt you, you've not had time to sort of understand why. Same in work, you know, that we get bogged in a job because we have to go and pay the bills, or we have to provide, or we feel we have to because that's what everybody else does. So we're in a constant, every time we hate our boss, our environment's crap that we work in. So we're constantly in that all the time, but we never ever can we finish it. Never ever do we let go of it. And even when we move from that job to another job, it still sits with us because what do we expect? We expect exactly the same thing to happen the next time around.
Yeah. We like the safety of knowing what's going to happen, don't we? And I think, just to preface the fact that trauma is such a big topic, I'm not trained in, processing trauma. I've done studies and CPD and stuff on trauma to become trauma informed, to understand, but from a personal perspective, like you said, the different experiences that we have in relation to trauma. I mean, I remember going for therapy and I sat there talking about life and experiences and not even thinking that, oh no, I haven't really had a traumatic upbringing. I've not had anything major happen, which I feel really blessed at. I hear some like awful stuff that people have had to experience. But then when you start talking about, oh, well, I was bullied all the way through school. Yeah. Or I had an early bereavement in my family, or, miscarriages. Like, there's so many things that can be traumatic to the person, because it's about what happens to them, isn't it? It's not like everybody, your trauma don't matter because my trauma is bigger, and it isn't. It's understanding that we're all affected by different things in our lives, that, like you said, sometimes we can't process the ending of a thing. Like, I can't process. How do I process the ending of being bullied from age 4 to 16? How do you do that? You can't. It's not like a tangible thing that I can just let it. That whole let it go thing.
And tell them you're a bastard and actually bully them.
And then they befriend you on Facebook to be your friend. Like, really? Like, nah. So the understanding of like our behaviours as we are now, and how we respond to situations, stems from experiences that we've had, is pivotal in how we move forward and how we adapt to change and grow, how we grow, I think.
How we perceive it, because again, doing a bit of therapy myself recently, kind of recognizing that, and we will get to the TA bit in a minute, before we obviously bring this lovely conversation to a close, discussed one of my earliest traumas, which isn't traumatic. It's not, like what you would describe as a capital T trauma or a big T trauma, which is abuse, neglect, whatever. It was a very, very small T trauma, but it was really personable to me that my parents had a shop and I was mad. I used to go perform for my families at Christmas dues, get a little jukebox going and singing a bit of Stevie Wonder and chuck a couple of quid in the bucket. And I saved it all. I used to count it maybe on the weekly just to see how much money I had. Didn't intend to spend it, definitely kept it. But every week the tin got heavier and heavier, until one day I went to the tin and it was empty. And in replace of all the lovely coins and my favourite pound coins that had scratches on or were brand new and nice and shiny, was a cheque for the money amount. And that in my eyes was like a huge trauma. It was a huge loss. I remember going to my mum going, I don't understand what this is, but where's all my money gone? And sort of badgering her on her coattails, being a 6-year-old, and her basically telling me, look, just get over it, kind of forget about it. But that being a very poignant part in my life where I actually recognised, and that taught me a lesson there, which was best not hang on to money, because if we do, it's just going to get taken
away.
So so that's how I've formed the
narrative
the
around. And I'm sorry you've had to experience that. And I think it's almost like, it's fine when we start learning about these things, isn't it? We kind of know. But the whole thing with trauma, with rupture and repair, is huge, isn't it? We can go through many ruptures and be part of a rupture, and especially in families and upbringings, and things happen. But I'd say not very often is the repair present. And I know I've done it as a parent. I know when my kids were little, there's things that have happened, like, don't touch that, don't do this, or they're falling off the bike, you'll be okay. But actually, now knowing this Claire at 48 years old, I kind of berate myself sometimes, going, oh, you were like, that's not how it should have been done. It's like, oh, I'm sorry I shouted at you. I would just shout at you because I was worried, or I didn't want you to hurt yourself. Or there's just an explanation there, like you said. So if somebody had maybe come to you with and had said, right, if they'd explained to you what was going to happen with that money, would that have helped you understand? I don't know.
I think even just the sheer fact of asking, the reasons were they couldn't get to the bank. The bank was shut, so they had no change. So I understood that, because otherwise the shop shuts. We don't have tea tonight because we've got no money. And I think that you're right. I think there isn't very rarely is there any attention paid to the repair, the actual acknowledgement of it, and then allowing us to have that breath of us coming back into our rest, digest.
It's that cycle again, like you said, the full cycles. Yeah. And again, that's a stress response, isn't it? It's that whole cyclic, thing, and the whole the awareness of what's happening, what's happened, and what could have happened is like, without ruminating over, I did all that wrong, I shouldn't have done that. That's a balance as well, isn't it? The whole compassion, the self-compassion narrative about, okay, well, you did the best that you could. And I know with the people that, in your world of work, I don't work in that world. It's a very alien world to me. I can't talk on that because I don't know much about it. But the people that I work with, of course they have their issues and challenges, and they want to change and they want to grow, but that has to come from that intrinsic inner desire to actually want to do it. Because you can give them the books, you can give them the resources, you can maybe give them a full sparkly strategy if that's what they really want, but unless you really want that and you're willing to walk up that mountain, and I think I read somewhere about, you can walk up the mountain and you can complain about your sore feet, or you can walk up that mountain and you can sing, and it depends which perspective you take, because you're still going to get up that mountain. It depends on your perspective. And not for 1 minute am I saying that change is easy, growth is easy, because it bloody isn't. And I think
it's discomforting.
It is, and especially when you add trauma in, and we are bombarded online now with trauma this, trauma that, trauma informed thing, and there are some good people out there and there's some not so good people out there that are kind of trying to heal, for want of a better word, and it can be quite dangerous. So I would just want to preface the fact that if it's something that people do want to look into, just to do their due diligence and to ensure that if you're seeing a therapist or seeing someone, please ensure that that person understands how to work with trauma. Because as a coach, if I was to happen, I don't know, let's give an instance, say somebody has a business and they want to go on social media but they don't want to be visible. So rather than me sitting there going, oh well, you just have to do a marketing strategy, you just have to get online twice a week and do a couple of videos and you'll be fine. But if I'm sat in front of somebody that doesn't want to be visible, I'll be really curious about, okay, well, why, what's going on? What's something happened? Because for me, visibility is huge. So me doing this is a big thing, because if you're bullied and you're putting your face out there, you're potentially opening yourself up for an onslaught of comments, the way that social media works.
Doing down.
It's
a bit
huge.
It's a very double-edged sword.
It's a very personal thing. And I think self-help, self-development, personal development, they are all important. And I think to have a goal, to have a purpose, it gives us that sense of fulfillment, I believe. But that's not about reaching for that whole disillusional level of perfectionism that just exhausts you and then doesn't feel congruent to you and it doesn't match your value. So I think, especially with the work that I do, it's like I do the pre-bit. So it's more so about, well, who are you now? What's going on for you now? And that's what I've had to do for myself. It's like, well, let's just accept where you are now rather than trying to be someone else, because I don't know how you feel about that as well in terms of acceptance level versus change.
I think it's very, very good, and you're right, obviously. And something that I say to the viewers is, if you do feel that people, you are in a traumatic state, you want to understand it, obviously our details will be down at the bottom. Obviously we're not saying categorically that we will heal your trauma, but we'll help you understand it a bit better and maybe recommend things that you could look into. Therapy, in my eyes, another great thing was, you don't heal trauma in a therapy room.
No.
Simply
but
because
again, it has to be attainable, doesn't it? Not everybody can afford therapy. I have a very small window in terms of affordability that, I can, and again, you've got that codependency, haven't you, of, well, can't always go to therapy. So I need to find those tools and the understanding to actually be able to self-manage and understand what's happening for me and what do I need? What do I need in this moment? But yes, I interrupt you then about.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I think it's just, for me, that whole awareness of, understanding, because again, people don't see it. I work with a lovely lady who she referred to herself as a keychain kid. It was back in the 60s when she grew up, where she was let out from school at 4 or 5 years old, had to walk the best part of a mile. Had a key to her house, but because the door was so heavy, she couldn't get herself in. This was the first time she tried it, and she was sat there for hours and hours on end. Her neighbours took her in, but her parents really didn't care, So, and she never really saw that as a thing. Watching her dad die in a very unloving, uncaring household. All of a sudden, seeing her father, be unwell, and mother then was caring for her, and she experienced that love as an older person, as a 20-year-old. So for me, I think, but she doesn't see that as traumatic. She doesn't see any of that as trauma. She just, it is what it is. The old staple of it can't be what it ain't. Those old throwaway comments, and they're very true. And I think it's about accepting that, yes, we have experienced it, and we all have, and that's something that we need to say from the get-go is we've all lived through trauma. COVID, at that period of time, was a trauma.
Collective
it was traumatic.
trauma. Yeah.
Every day being told you're going to die if you walk for more than
it's fear. It's a fear, isn't it?
It's a fear factor.
we do, and it's, I suppose it's finding that balance as well, isn't it, between not getting so deep in the trenches of thinking that everything's wrong, which can be so hard not to do sometimes, because it can be, can't it? It's like we just can't see the wood for the trees, and we can't get out of that place of darkness, because I'm sure you've been there. I know I've been there. And what comes next? How do you find that light?
I think at this point it's really, what do people recognize about that? The procrastination matrix, the self-improvement thing doesn't have an end. It is the end to start, to finish, or what do we do? So it's kind of, how do we navigate around this board? And once we've been around it once, we've still got to keep playing and keep playing and keep playing until we've filled all the squares. But I think for me, what kicks about in that is the procrastination of trauma, because it becomes a procrastinating spot where if we scrubbed out the word time to get some work done, and this perfect time to get some therapy done, we still have that inner part of us, our little monkey, our instant gratification person, saying, no, why bother? And then there is a great thing, and I would recommend of Wait But Why procrastination podcast, TED Talk, Tim Urban, the guy, beautiful fellow. And I think when you experience procrastination in your life in general, I'll always remember being the full factor of this, but we used to have to do presentations at university. Claire would be a constant panic. You'd have a panic monster in your room all the time, wouldn't you?
I still do.
It'd be like 10 weeks to go before the presentation. It's not good enough. You've already smashed it. I always used to say to Claire, it's your superpower, it's your gift, because I'd look at her stuff and go, wow, it's all organized. And she was
but then what did I do with you?
Point. Well, I know. So with me, you looked at me and went, wow, because I'd be there half an hour before still creating the slides, and just go for it. And everybody go, wow, how's he done that? Oh, he knows what he's talking about. I used to fake it. I used to pretend. Great.
And we do have different routes in, don't we? And I know, I've learned that my perfectionism is because I want to do the right thing. I've got the whole good girl thing going on that is like, I can't do anything wrong because I don't want rejection. I don't want, don't want to be a failure. But also at the same time, I kind of find it quite difficult to think of being successful. So I'm kind of caught in that ping pong world of like, well, actually, I'll probably deal with failure a little bit better because that's just how my brain's wired almost, because of then I know it's coming. And
that's interesting for you being the good girl approach, whereas I would say my approach is definitely more the bad boy approach, in the sense of
just
do the
rebel,
homework, lastminute.com. If it's shit, great, because I can say, oh, well, I just did it last minute. I can try and blame everything else apart from the fact that I was just lazy. But is it laziness? I think it's protective. I think because for me, doing work, being judged on your performance in an environment, especially like education, where you're learning, you're being sort of marked on. You've learned enough so you can go on to the next bit.
You got to be good enough.
Dumbfounded, because I was damned if I did, I was damned if I didn't. I'd always get pulled some way or the other, so might as well
you
do
came
what
out,
feels right.
You did it. We both did it under different, like a lot of people, I think it's quite easy to forget the things that we don't celebrate ourselves enough either. And I know for myself, I don't. I even on graduation day, like I remember picking that certificate up and it's like, oh, well, that's done now. Like I just didn't. I mean, there was all sorts of other stuff going on, but essentially we just need
climax, wasn't it?
Yeah, give ourselves also the time, like even if it's just weekly or monthly, just to sit and go, what have I done really well this month? Like, what are my strengths? What am I good at? I just don't think we spend enough time kind of being okay with being okay as well. Like, and it's okay to feel okay, because sometimes I go through phases going, well, a lot of people around me aren't really doing too well at the minute, but I don't want to say that I'm okay, because that's just not a really good thing to do, is it? But
I'm okay, but you're not. So it's,
exactly.
so I'll pretend I'm not
I'll pretend I'm not okay, because
I'll
then
fit
you'll
in
be
with
okay.
your
So that's
story.
caretaking, isn't it? And I've got a huge caretaker role part of me. I will not want to make a decision in case I upset that other person. So my brain will go, oh, but Claire, if you make that decision, then that person's then got to sort that out. Whereas actually I have to go, actually, this decision's for me. And what happens thereon, that's got nothing to do with me.
That's
and
on
that's
them.
so hard, because I've just I've never had the strength to not want to let people down, because of, the conflict, the potential upset. It's all interlinked, and once you understand and you have that awareness, then you can kind of go, okay, this is what I recognize a part of my patterns, like I said, the cycles that we find ourselves in, of wanting to change and realizing actually we have changed, because we've recognized more than what we did before.
So how does it feel now for you, being in this new, like, obviously I know like new comings, what's going to happen, it's all very up in the air for you at the minute.
Yeah.
But have you actually praised yourself over this decision to sort of quit uni? Actually recognizing
there's moments I think generally there tends to have been the last couple of weeks more nausea about what have I done? What have I actually done? Have I just jumped ship way too soon? And I think, like you said earlier, which was quite helpful for me to hear, when you said about the fact that I've listened to myself. I've not listened to the things that I should do. And I've not gone, well, this makes sense, this route, for you to do this route and train to be a therapist, because that's just logical. And I've had to step away from that and go, actually, my soul is crying because this just doesn't feel right. Every inch of my body is screaming at me, and my soul's going, which is a bit woo for some people, maybe. I get it, because it's like a different world, isn't it? When you start tapping away from here into actually tapping into what's going on for your body. It's a new
that's
thing.
the immeasurable bit though, isn't it? That's the
but
bit
my heart's not going to lie.
Heart. No, it's not.
But they say gut, heart and head, don't they? That's supposed to be the order. And yeah, I'm in this, like I said, that book, that whole transition phase of that middle messy bit now of going, oh my God, what have I done? Was it the right thing to stay? Is it the wrong thing that I'm going to do? But actually, no, I have to trust, in the sense that I think I said to you, didn't I, when we were talking about whatever decision I make is the right decision. And I've made that decision. And for me, that was the biggest thing, because I could have kept going and going and going, and my well-being would have suffered more and more and more. And I would have become more incongruent with what I was doing. And I have integrity and I have values, and I want to do what is right. And I know I'm a good coach. I know they've got other skill sets that I can bring together. And I want, especially as well, recognizing over the past few years with my kind of neurosparkly, neurodivergent differences, it's so challenging, because I had no idea until recently how, like, my coping strategies were kind of okay. And then the wheels came off, and I don't even know where the wheels are now, because they've gone, they've like long gone. And understanding again that
pictures I'm getting of just like
a
big wheel disappearing over 50 miles an hour.
Don't even try catch them, because, and again, that's that ending and beginning again, isn't it? And the change, because it's like, I think there was a quote in here from Alice in Wonderland where the caterpillar asks Alice how she is, and she says something about, well, I was okay this morning, but I think I've changed since then. And we change all the time. The interactions that we have, the connections we meet, through the day, things that we hear on the news, or all affects.
Society likes to pin us in, like say that the whole message of society is that it's okay to change. And,
is it?
Just touching on this, kind of we all have to conform to being in employment. And, God forbid you get into a job and 2 months in or 5 weeks in, you go, you know what, this isn't for me. This isn't for me. And I feel that that's a brave person to actually go, great. Because I'd be like, wow, I celebrate you. There's your check. You know what, I'll pay you the rest of this month just because you've been aware. And actually, I respect you coming to me and saying this isn't for you. But that stops us then living that constant cycle of reliving it, which is, this is difficult, I don't like it. And there is hurt, there is challenge and discomfort, and actually trying to find comfort in discomfort is a very niche thing. But when it goes against your grain, when it's like literally rubbing a cat up the wrong way, we talk about values a lot, don't we? And when the values don't meet, and the place we work for, it's all anti-values to us.
Yeah.
Our values are forever evolving, like we are. We change our values. We develop them. We let some go. We bring new ones in. But in business, everything's ring fenced. In work, and God forbid you quit a job and it goes on your CV that you've only been in there for 5 weeks.
Obviously, my CV.
Yeah, bounces like a rubber ball. For me, it's the same. I get a gut feeling, and recently I've just been going, nope, I'm cool. I'll leave that alone. As much as I want to, it's important. And I think just touching on that part, this is part of it, what's known as transactional analysis. The fact that, like you've touched on, we are always constantly in transaction. And do we analyze it a lot? No. So I think this is a perfect picture of what TA, transactional analysis, and our injunctions of the don'ts, what we have to then create for us to exist and keep head above the water. So the Drowning Person by Adriana Lee, I think it is. So there's that. Some of the best ones don't exist. Don't grow up. Don't be a child.
Don't feel,
children should be seen, not heard. Don't feel. Don't belong. All the don'ts. They're all the parts of us that we've adapted to remain attached through our time in developmental stage, where from our 0 or even -9 months to 18 years old, that we have to negotiate, but they often become a part of us that we can't ever cut away. So there are injunctions. So don't, the whole thing of don't exist, that saying of little boys should be seen and not heard,
right?
That whole thing of don't feel that you fall off the bike, and God forbid you actually cry because you've grazed your knee. My dad never said it, but I heard plenty saying it, going, don't cry because I'll give you something to cry about. God forbid you feel. So what then do we have to do? We have to hold these bloody great big balloons above our head. So we all know what Claire's is: be perfect, don't we? There has to be a level of perfectionism. Because what would you say your don't is on there, Claire? Just to sort of
I'm just looking at them, like, so I'm looking at the thing. I think definitely the don't feel, because that's suppressed. As suppressing emotions for me was the biggest thing. Like internalizing everything for me was like massive, which again didn't turn out too well. But I don't know. I think it depends on the situation. I mean, I think one that's not on there for me was like don't be too much. And I think I even heard that a couple of weeks ago, that you're too much. And
I suppose don't be you. Don't be you,
because
that's
basically what
I'd never
is,
consider you being too much, but if someone's telling you you're too much for me, well, sure, your fault, mate.
And I try and have compassion for my childhood, and I'm sure people do, in terms of the parents of being parents, and they're doing what they can do at that time, and it's only from this onslaught of information that we have now that we're learning these things. Years gone by, we wouldn't have had a clue, would we? No, about this information.
And I've separated this slightly differently as well. So that, like, so don't be you. Why aren't you calmer? Why aren't you more subdued? Why are you too much? They can be very non-verbal as well, can't they? There can be a look, there can be a feeling. They don't have to be something where somebody's wagging a finger at you.
Non-verbal's huge, isn't it? The emotions that you pick up and the body language.
It's like I was saying, don't feel.
That moves into worlds of work, doesn't it? That maybe growing up, you kind of you would kind of be met with certain expressions or body language, and that holds on, doesn't it? And then as you go through different phases in schooling and work, if somebody looks at you a certain way, that that has a consequence in how you behave and how you respond.
Hugely. And I think these are all big telltales of why we struggle to evolve, why we struggle to develop, sort of grow, in essence, because these bloody balloons that we hold above ourselves,
please others,
they're all big messages that we then hold on to, but then how we can't just let them go. We have to keep them to some degree. And one thing that I do with a lot of my clients, where I use that sort of that mental image of holding a balloon, is for us to let the be perfect balloon go, we got to bring in 4 or 5 new little balloons. They'll never be as big as that first initial big balloon. So we've got to bring in 2 or 3 or 4 others we've got to be something else. So the be perfect. So be okay failing. Be compassionate. See, there's all sorts of these things before we can let that big one go. and bringing in those balloons and holding on to that.
Well, it's tiring as well, isn't
energy.
it? Like hold it, like we've got to hold these things, and sometimes we don't know we're holding them, and it again, I mean, you're right in what you called the conversation about evolution, because it is, isn't it? It's understanding that actually it's okay to let that perfection balloon go, because my world's not going to shatter. But actually, I might think it is, because something's going to change if I let go of that balloon. And again, you're already in that whole new cycle then, aren't you, of going, oh well, what does not perfect look like? And that's, again, you're stepping into new territory, which means we'll be talking for another 6 hours. So it's there's so much to this, isn't there, essentially? And I think
it's a deep rooted thing. So
self-acceptance and being kind to ourselves and compassionate to oneself, they're the things that I didn't do. They're the things that I'm learning how to do. I'm not quite on the whole self-love thing, because that just doesn't align with me, doesn't resonate with me. But certainly working towards self-acceptance is a big step for me.
So would you say that these new awarenesses, these new feelings that you've got going on, the compassion to self, these are all, I say these might be brand new balloons that you're just getting used to, like they're like a new coat, and something that you maybe recommend to others that are going through a similar situation?
Yeah, and I think, you're right. I love that analogy of them being new little balloons, because there's still things that we have to hold on to. We do need things to hold on to, though, sometimes as well, because it kind of gives us that purpose and that meaning.
This is a thing, though. If we didn't have them, we wouldn't exist. We sink, we drown, we go.
And they're both there all the time, aren't they? Depending on where we are, who we're with, what we experience. Life goes through rhythms as well. It ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's okay, and we don't want to do any change, and everything's okay-ish. We're just where we are. But when we hit that wall of going, either something external has happened that's affected our purpose, then things do change unexpectedly, don't they? Without reasoning, and so it's such a big topic. But it definitely, change happens sometimes when you don't realise. And I still think it's the going back, the dots going back, that you actually realise.
The beauty of us being humans is we are meaning makers. We have to find sense and meaning in what it is to be, so hence why we decided to do this today. Let's have a conversation on it, because let's try and understand it a bit better to help us progress, help us grow. Obviously, I know everything's up in the air, balls are juggling around, plates are spinning, however you want to look at them, but where's your gut taking you now into your own realm? Because I know, obviously, before, when you left university, you set your own thing up and you were putting yourself out there and doing great. Obviously, the wobbles happen, something's gone on. So what's next for Claire? What's going to be Claire's
good question. I still
thing?
I mean, my purpose for going to university back in 2019 was to continue my coaching, but to be ethical with my coaching and work in my level of competence, my zone of competence, which, that's really important for me. So I'll continue to do trainings, which what I'm doing, but I'm really, really keen to support women with balance and fulfillment and working with their life rhythm, because I think the one thing that I've realised through my own patterns of rhythm and ebbs and flows of life, I need to learn how to cope with those moments. So that's an area that I really, really like to work in, and I'm continuing to support the community centre with their wellbeing workshops and.
So that's in York, attached to the university. So again, I'll drop a link in the bio below about the work that Claire does. I suppose final thoughts are, if you were going to encourage somebody to listen to a song that might sort of help them understand this a little bit better, what song would you pick?
I don't think I could, because that's really strange. I love the question, actually, to be fair, but that reminds me when I used to be a wedding planner, when people used to ask me questions like that, like first dance songs, or it would be the same as, what photographer do you recommend? And I think the response was always, that is so personal, because what you see as being magic to someone isn't the same to someone else. And I think personally for me, music, I love music, and I know you do. You're all over the singing and stuff. I haven't got quite the singing voice. But I think I trust in now that I'm learning to understand more about me and what I'm feeling, I can then use that to align with music that I need to listen to. So briefly, if we'll go to the window of tolerance, maybe I'm feeling super stressed. What do I need to do to help bring me back, come back down? So I need to listen to something that's going to help kind of calm me. So that could be anything from jazz to, you know, R&B to it. Just I'm quite eclectic with my music taste. But then if I'm
what
feeling
was the last thing that you listened to that brought you down, that calmed you? Was it jazz? What, you know, was there anything?
Probably something like that, or Ray, or, you know, just a song that makes me connect to the lyrics and the music. And then if I'm feeling very kind of disconnected, I need dance music. So for me, it's like that. But I also love shamanic drumming, because I love the kind of the grounding of the kind of brings you back up into the present.
Yeah.
So I think it's a self-discovery practice and experiment by itself. I think it's great to kind of just build some Spotify playlists that are there for you when you need something. It's a good question.
It allows you to communicate, allows you to connect, and one that I was going to say, obviously I offered one out, but I had a backup just in case you were a bit slippery, like I thought you'd be, you know. Is because I think what matters about evolution and what matters about our growth, I think, is our love for ourselves. It's our internal prospect of love. So for me, something that's been resonating with me madly recently is heard it. I have to listen to things to go to sleep, like a lot of people do that are a bit neurospicy. And a certain song came on in this thing that I was watching, and I woke up the next morning like, I need to find that song. It was like kind of an in and out dream, and it's called The Book of Love by Peter Gabriel.
Right.
And for me, I think, and I'll put a link to it, but I think the lyrics, the softness of the song, it's really important because it talks about the connection of love.
Yeah.
But it talks about very much love between two people. But where do we ever actually, you know, go to ourselves? We need to love ourselves before we can love anybody else. So for me, it's a bit of a love song to ourselves, in the sense of, you know, read me things, sing me things, whatever you sing me, it's going to be fine. So that form of acceptance of loving yourself, I think, is a really key factor.
Yeah. And that's self-care as well, isn't it? Which is really, really crucial to help, you know, give us that energy, kind of just comfort ourselves, isn't it? Of that, in that moment of giving ourselves that time. And music's very, I don't know, I can't imagine a world without music.
Yeah, it'd be tough. It would be tough.
Yeah, it would be.
I want to thank you for today and your time. I hope you've got something from it. Obviously, I hope our listeners do too, or our watchers.
Hope so.
Like I say, whatever fish we catch, great. You know, so thank you. And obviously, like I say, I'll share with you, if it's all right, your socials. Like I say, if there is any women specifically out there that's maybe going through the menopause, having difficulties with themselves or just connecting with life, Claire is a fantastic coach. You're very holistic in your approach. Like I say, you're a bit witchy, which we all are deep down. We just
I think it's more like I like to kind of work with nature and the seasons, and just tapping into recognizing your own purpose and strengths, which to me, that's what that whole thing is about, isn't it? It's kind of, sometimes we can lose touch of our own magic and, you know, who we are underneath, like we said, about values and self-acceptance and all those things. So there's a great big banner of things, but it's been a pleasure talking to you as always, because I'm sure we could do many topics. we could, and who knows what this might look like going forward. But you know, thank you for today. Thank you for giving your time up. Message to you all: just be kind, love each other, love yourselves, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Claire, thank you for today. Thank you very much, Adam.
Take care.
You.